Hi, YouTube. Oh my gosh, I think I'm gonna sneeze immediately. Hey folks. Okay, so chavs are like a UK subculture. Now I'm speaking, this is potentially years out of date, okay? I lived there like a while ago. But they also called themselves townies. And it was such an interesting mix of styles. Ash, thank you for having the YouTube stream open to support. Thank you so much. Okay, so at least when I was there, they would wear, do you remember those athletic pants, the tearaways that like snap down the sides? Yeah, trackies in general, but like they were really into the tearaways. And then also like Ralph Lauren polo shirts with tracky bottoms. The girls would wear like really tight high ponytails. That was before tight high ponytails came into style in North America. So it looked very like 90s, right? With big hoop earrings. And then for some reason, Burberry, you know, like the high street fashion store, like Burberry, having like a, often not real Burberry, it'd be like a Burberry knockoff, but like a Burberry scarf or cap, and like high top trainers or something. So like this mix of like athletic wear and high street fashion, but also it was a very like, how do I say this, and genuinely not in an insulting way, but like it was a lower social like it would, you see it more in like lower income neighborhoods. But then weirdly, like the music that they listened to was like really poppy EDM. Like I would have expected that they listened to like hip hop or something, but no, it was techno. And not just techno, but like really like commercial, like freaking Sandstorm or something, you know? And most of my encounters with them were like sitting at the bus stop at night, and they'd be like breaking the side mirrors off of cars, and frequently there would be babies there in their strollers while all this was happening. And it was just such a weird like things that in North America would be coming from like disparate cultures kind of pushed together. It was very unique. Like, yeah, it was very interesting to see. Anyway. Okay, hi. Sorry, that was a weird little tangent. Hello. Madam. You have started really sabotaging my streams. Do you remember before you got sick and made a miraculous recovery when you were such a polite and quiet pig? And now you want the world to know you're still here. Yeah, yes you are, lady. Hi. Has anyone seen the slut? I've seen the slut. Yeah. I'm not sure where that slut is tonight. But yeah, I've seen them around. Okay, hello. Yes, we are back to read more of Tik-Tok of Oz. You're still here too? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. We do love Cloud. We do. We started reading this book a couple of days ago. And we got through 6 chapters. They're not very long chapters, to be fair, but we are going to be continuing on with that. Here's the TLDR for Tik-Tok of Oz, which, by the way, is book number 8? Book number 8, I think, in the Wizard of Oz series. Basically, there's kind of 3 stories already going on. One of them, let's start easy. There's a new girl in town. She's from Oklahoma. She was in a shipwreck, much like Dorothy was several books ago, and washed ashore in Fairyland, much like Dorothy did several books ago, with her animal companion, much like Dorothy had several books ago. So, well done, Frank. You're a bastion of original content. But this girl is named Betsy Bobbin, and she has a mule named Hank. And Hank, I guess, is only the second animal after Toto who has come to Fairyland and is not able to speak. I don't know what that says about Toto and Hank, but maybe they're not super intelligent. I don't know. I don't know what makes some animals start to speak and some don't. I don't know if Hank will start speaking at any point. Toto never did. But that other story where Dorothy crash lands in a fairyland with a horse, the horse could speak. The horse could speak in Oz, so I don't know, man. Well, the cat made of glass that's different, right? Like that was an inanimate object brought to life. Toto's dumber than glass. Yeah. You were the Din Man for the school play. That's awesome. Hi, Natasha. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Natasha. Welcome. Sprinkle I mean, I don't know why Toto can't talk. I don't know why Hank can't talk. But anyways, they have washed up ashore in the Rose Kingdom, which is technically part of Oz. Oz, even though it's all ruled by Ozma, does have myriad smaller kingdoms that have their own monarchs that just those. Yes, I know. Yes, you have a kingdom too. Hi, King Cloud. Right? Why did Bomb choose that specific spelling when TikTok is already a thing? No, oh my goodness, no, these were written in the early 1900s. Yeah, these are in the public domain. I gotta say, Betsy, I don't know what's wrong with her, but she does not seem bothered by everything she's been through. Like, already in the first few chapters, she washed overboard off her ship with a donkey in a raging thunderstorm at sea. And then in the distance, watched the ship that she had been on explode and sink beneath the waves. And then she rode around on a little scrap of wood with this donkey for like 3 days before washing ashore a strange land. And then they wander, in search of life, find a greenhouse. She goes in, it's full of roses. The roses look at her, and each of these giant roses has a woman's face in the middle of it. And then this weird-looking man, the gardener, rushes in with his shears and starts yelling at her about how he's going to execute her. And then another weird man, who's very old and shaggy, falls through the roof of the greenhouse and takes out his, weird mind-washing magnet. And she's just like, hi, I'm Betsy. This bitch cannot be fazed. And she should be. When shit like this goes down, you should be a little, even if you are optimistic and competent, you should be a little bit fazed, So, we'll see. Makings of a psychopath, in my opinion. Now, they did get out of there. But she's going to travel with the Shaggy Man, which is problematic because he's got this weird magnet that makes people love him against their will, and he's used it in past books to abduct several children, including Dorothy. So that's a little weird. Hi, Ahmed. Hi, hola, goodbye. Hello, welcome. The Shaggy Man is on a mission to find his brother. Now, the Shaggy Man is a previous character. He comes from the US. He was a hobo there, and now he lives full-time in Oz. He's from Oklahoma as well, and his brother apparently was a miner. And so the Shaky Man, his brother disappeared in the mines, and the Shaky Man's theory is that the Gnome King grabbed him because maybe he mined some gold, and the Gnome King is very greedy about having all the precious metals. The Gnome King has since changed his name. That's dumb. And the other story that's going on is that we were introduced to a whole other kingdom. And I know this is a lot, and we've only read 6 chapters so far, but there's a whole other kingdom. What was it? Ugaboo? And there's only like it's small. There's only 18 men in the whole country, and the queen has decided that she doesn't want to be the queen of this piffling little country, and so she takes every single man from the land to build her army, and her plan is to march on the Emerald City and take it by force and become the ruler of all of Oz. However, Glinda was sitting in her house reading her book that knows everything, saw that this was happening, did a little magic, diverted their route so that they came out in a totally different land, and now they're lost as fuck. Wait, none good? I don't know if you're saying that as a joke or seriously. Ola, I'm not doing music here. Unless L. Frank Baum makes me. So that's all caught up. Good night, Parisia. Oh my goodness. Well, I hope you feel better soon. I'm so glad you popped in to say hi. All right. Wait, really none good? Jesus. Also, if you are new here, when we read the Oz books, we play Wizard of Oz bingo. Oh shit, I need to open it. 1 second. It'll only take a second. Hi, Tyra. It does sound... Oh, man, I don't know. It just sounds like baby talk to me. Okay, let's see. Let's show you guys the bingo board. There we go. And also here, let me as you can see, we already ticked off several in our first session. Okay, the ones that we've already ticked off: Sussy Mind Control. They go to a new fairyland. Hold on, let me adjust this. There, guys. There we go. Now you can see it all. Retconning canon events. The love magnet interferes in some way. Horrors beyond comprehension, and threat of or attempted execution. So, yes. Hi, Rayshawn. Welcome back. It's good to see you again. Horrors is such a low bar. It really is. It really is. Okay. So, let's get reading. Now, if you are following along with me, if you would like to follow along with me, oh my gosh. Man, I always feel the absence of Sean. Sean is so good at, like, pinning the messages and things. Hold on. And then let me copy that for YouTube. Okay. So if you would like to read along with me, just check the pinned comment, and whichever chat you're in, you can download it for absolutely free from Project Gutenberg. ModView makes copying those messages a chore because of pin. Oh, got it, okay. All right. Let's jump into it. Hi, Batman. I randomly came into your feed. Well, thanks for popping in and saying hi. We're about to read some really messed up stories. Are you interested? Okay. So we are starting with chapter 7 tonight, and there is yet another familiar name already coming out in the chapter title. Chapter 7, Polychrome's Pitiful Plight. Do you guys remember Polychrome? That's one of the children that the Shaky Man abducted in the past. But she did get away and went back to live in the sky with her father. Neither, Batman. I'm Canadian. You loved it? Yeah, she's great. Daughter of the Rainbow, yeah. Okay, hi, Texas. All right. The Rain King got too much water in his basin and spilled some over the brim. That made it rain in a certain part of the country, a real hard shower for a time, and sent the rainbow scampering to the place to show the gorgeous colors of his glorious bow as soon as the mist of rain had passed and the sky was clear. And the coming of the rainbow is always a joyous event to Earth folk, yet few have ever seen it close by. Usually, the rainbow is so far distant that you can observe its splendid hues but dimly, and that is why we seldom catch sight of the dancing daughters of the rainbow. In the barren country where the rain had just fallen, there appeared to be no human beings at all. But the rainbow appeared just the same, and dancing gaily upon its arch were the rainbow's daughters, led by the fairy-like Polychrome, who is so dainty and beautiful that no girl has ever quite equaled her in loveliness. Polychrome was in a merry mood and danced down the arch to the bow of the ground, daring her sisters to follow her. Laughing and gleeful, they also touched the ground with their twinkling feet. But all the daughters of the rainbow knew that this was a dangerous pastime, so they quickly climbed upon their bow again. All but Polychrome. Though the sweetest and merriest of them all, she was likewise the most reckless. Moreover, it was an unusual sensation to pat the cold, damp ground with her rosy toes. Before she realized it, the bow had lifted and disappeared in the billowy blue sky. And here was Polychrome, standing helpless upon a rock, her gauzy draperies floating about her like brilliant cobwebs, and not a soul, fairy or mortal, to help her regain her lost bow. Oh good, you banned them. Thank you. Dear me, she exclaimed, a frown passing across her pretty face. I'm caught again. Oh, this is the second time my carelessness has left me on Earth while my sisters return to our sky palaces. The first time I enjoyed some pleasant adventures. Oh, but this is a lonely, forsaken country, and I shall be very unhappy until my rainbow comes again and I can climb aboard. Let me think what is best to be done. Thanks, Fitch. Yeah, we have no need for homophobes in our community. Okay. She crouched low upon the flat rock, drew her draperies about her, and bowed her head. It was in this position that Betsy Bobbin spied Polychrome as she came along the stony path, followed by Hank, the princess and Shaggy. At once the girl ran up to the radiant daughter of the rainbow and exclaimed, "Oh, what a lovely, lovely creature!" Polychrome raised her golden head. There were tears in her blue eyes. "I'm the most miserable girl in the whole world," she sobbed. The others gathered around her. "Tell us your troubles, pretty one," urged the princess. Right, the Rose Princess, the Rose Garden Princess, was the only member of the royal rose family that was ripe enough to be picked, but the roses refused to be ruled by her because she's not a man rose. So she got exiled. I've lost my bow, wailed Polychrome. "Take me, my dear," said Shaggy Man in a sympathetic tone, thinking she meant bow instead of bow. Ew. Okay, thinking she meant beau, B-E-A-U, which means like a suitor, instead of bow like a rainbow. Bro, she's a child and you're an ancient old man. She doesn't want you to be her suitor. Also, even if someone is crying and being like, "I've lost my love," they don't want some shaggy ass strange old man to come up and be like, "I'll be your lover." Like, that's just, how is that a solution? Peace all night. It's just a flavored water with a little bit of energy drink in it. Late for eternity, thank you for the follow. Welcome. Okay. But why, Bomb? All right. "I don't want you," cried Polychrome. Yeah, girl, stamping her foot imperiously. "I want my rainbow." Oh, that's different," said Shaggy. "Wouldn't try to forget it. When I was young, I used to cry for the rainbow myself, but I couldn't have it. Looks as if you couldn't have it either. So please don't cry." Do they not remember each other? They've traveled together before. Polychrome looked at him reproachfully. "I don't like you," she said. "No?" replied Shaggy, drawing the love magnet from his pocket. "Not a little bit? Just a wee speck of a like?" "Yes, yes," said Polychrome, clasping her hands in ecstasy as she gazed at the enchanted talisman. "I love you, Shaggy Man." This is so fucked up. This man needs to be in jail. Her voice modulation is insane. Oh, thank you. Thank you. "Well, of course you do," said he calmly. "Well, I don't take any credit for it. It's the love magnet's powerful charm. But you seem quite alone and friendless, little rainbow." "Don't you want to join our party until you find your father and sisters again?" "Where are you going to?" she asked. "We don't just know that," said Betsy, taking her hands, "but we're trying to find Shaggy's long-lost brother, who's been captured by the terrible Metal Monarch. Won't you come with us and help us?" Polychrome looked from one to another of the queer party of travelers, and a bewitching smile suddenly lighted her face. "A donkey, a mortal maid, a rose princess, and a Shaggy Man," she exclaimed. "Surely you need help if you intend to face Ruggedo." "Oh, do you know him then?" inquired Betsy. "No, indeed. Ruggedo's caverns are beneath the earth's surface, where no rainbow can ever penetrate. but I've heard of the Metal Monarch. He is also called the Gnome King, you know, and he has made trouble for a good many people, mortals and fairies, in his time," said Polychrome. "Do you fear him, then?" asked the princess anxiously. "Oh, no one can harm a daughter of the rainbow," said Polychrome proudly. "I'm a sky fairy." "Then," said Betsy quickly, "you will be able to tell us the way to Ruggedo's cavern." "No," returned Polychrome, shaking her head. "That is one thing I cannot do. But I will gladly go with you and help you search for the place." Well, this promise delighted all the wanderers, and after the Shaggy Man had found the path again, they began moving along it in a more happy mood. The Rainbow's Daughter danced lightly over the rocky trail, no longer sad, but with her beautiful features wreathed in smiles. Shaggy came next, walking steadily and now and then supporting the Rose Princess, who followed him. Betsy and Hank brought up the rear, and if she tired with walking, the girl got upon Hank's back and let the stout little donkey carry her for a while. That's weird that they don't seem to recognize each other. At nightfall, they came to some trees that grew beside a tiny brook, and here they made camp and rested until morning. Then away they tramped, finding berries and fruits here and there, which satisfied the hunger of Betsy. Shaggy and Hank said that they were... Oh, wait. Which satisfied the hunger of Betsy, Shaggy, and Hank, so that they were well content with their lot. Amnesia of some kind? I don't know, Stan. I can't think of why they would have amnesia. I think it's just L. Frank Baum not being a very good writer, to be honest. That's what I'd put my money on. He's generally making a mess of things. The interchanging of donkey and mule, they're not the same thing, man. Okay. Alright. It surprised Betsy to see the Rose Princess partake of their food, for she considered her a fairy. But, when she mentioned this to Polychrome, the Rainbow's Daughter explained that when Ozga was driven out of her Rose Kingdom, she ceased to be a fairy and would never again be more than a mere mortal. Polychrome, however, was a fairy wherever she happened to be, and if she sipped a few dewdrops by moonlight for refreshment, no one ever saw her do it. As they continued their wandering journey, direction meant very little to them, for they were hopelessly lost in this strange country. Oh, Rayshawn, he's a recurring character. He came in several books ago, and he, basically, he also is from America. He meets Dorothy originally in Kansas, and then they cross over into Fairyland together, and then he ends up living full-time in Oz and wanders around, and, he's just, like, a shaggy old hobo, even though technically he's, like, doesn't have to be anymore because Ozma gave him rooms at the palace, but I don't know, it's just like his lifestyle, I guess. Oh no, our tags. Oh no. Hi, Maddie. Maddie, thank you for the streak. Thank you. Okay. Shaggy said it would be best to go toward the mountains, as the natural entrance to Ruggedo's underground cavern was likely to be hidden in some rocky, deserted place. But mountains seemed all around them, except in the one direction that they had come from, which led to the Rose Kingdom and the sea. Therefore it mattered little which way they traveled. By and by, they espied a faint trail that looked like a path, and after following this for some time, they reached a crossroads. Here were many paths, leading in various directions, and there was a signpost, so old that there were now no words upon the sign. At one side was an old well with a chain windlass for drawing water, yet there was no house or other building anywhere in sight. While the party halted, puzzled which way to proceed, the mule approached the well and tried to look into it. "He's thirsty," said Betsy.
"It's a dry well," remarked Shaggy. "Probably there's been no water in it for many years. But come, let us decide which way to travel."
Ash, oh my goodness. Ash, thank you for the sub. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Waiting for midnight to take over for that. Aw, Ash, that is so sweet of you. Thank you so much. And if you're still hanging out when we're done the reading segment, I would love to give you a name trace for that, okay? So if you're still around, make sure to call that in. Why someone would want to live homeless when they don't have... I have no idea, Rayshawn. I don't know. I don't know. That's his lifestyle. Right. No one seemed to be able to decide that. They sat down in a group and tried to consider which road might be the best to take. Hank, however, could not keep away from the well, and finally he reared up on his hind legs, got his head over the edge, and uttered a loud "Hee-haw." Betsy watched her animal friend curiously. "I wonder if he sees anything down there," she said. At this, Shaggy rose and went over to the well to investigate, and Betsy went with him. The princess and Polychrome, who had become fast friends, linked arms and sauntered down one of the roads to find an easy path.
"Really," said Shaggy, "there does seem to be something at the bottom of this old well."
"Well, can't we pull it up and see what it is?" asked the girl. "Oh, Ash, you were so... Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you. Artax, thanks for supporting over on YouTube. Yes, if anyone on Twitch is able to open up the YouTube stream, even just in a little side window in the corner kind of thing, that really helps with the watch hours, which is something that we need to unlock. You guys, wait! Oh my god! Sorry. That was not relaxing. You guys, though, do you know what I saw? And I was planning to announce it on stream, but then I got so distracted with talking about other stuff on stream. Guess what? On this YouTube channel, we hit the 500 sub goal for unlocking. No, we don't have the watch hours yet, but to unlock the YouTube partner program, you have to hit a sub goal and watch hours for tier 1, and then a higher sub goal and watch hours for tier 2. And we have now hit the sub goal for tier 1, and we're working on the watch hours for tier 1. Anyways, yes, we hit a milestone. I'm excited about it. So thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah. So, huzzah. Sorry. Meant to say that much earlier in the stream, but I get distracted so easily. But I'm very, very excited about it. Okay. Sorry. There was no bucket at the end of the windlass chain, but there was a big hook that at one time was used to hold the bucket. Shaggy let down this hook, dragged it around on the bottom, and then pulled it up. An old hoop skirt came with it, and Betsy laughed and threw it away. The thing frightened Hank, who had never seen a hoop skirt before, and he kept a good distance away from it. Several other objects the Shaggy Man captured with the hook and drew up, but none of these was important.
"This well seems to have been the dump for all the old rubbish in the country,"
he said, letting down the hook once more.
"I guess I've captured everything now. No, the hook is caught again. Help me, Betsy. Whatever this thing is, it's heavy.
She ran up and helped him turn the windlass, and after much effort, a confused mass of copper came in sight.
Good gracious, exclaimed Shaky. Well, here's a surprise indeed.
What is it? Inquired Betsy, clinging to the windlass and panting for support. For answer, the Shaggy Man grasped the bundle of copper and dumped it upon the ground, free from the well. Then he turned it over with his foot, spread it out, and to Betsy's astonishment, the thing proved to be a copper man.
Just as I thought,
said Shaggy, looking hard at the object.
But unless there are 2 copper men in the world, this is the most astonishing thing I ever came across.
At this moment, the Rainbow's Daughter and the Rose Princess approached them, and Polychrome said, "What have you found, Shaggy One?"
Either an old friend or a stranger, he replied.
"Oh, here's a sign on his back," cried Betsy, who had knelt down to examine the man. "Oh, dear me, how funny. Listen to this." Then she read the following words, engraved upon the copper plates of the man's body. Smith and Tinkers, patent, double action, extra responsive, thought creating, perfect mechanical man, fitted with our special clockwork attachments. Wait. Oh, okay, sorry, it's cut off a little bit. Clockwork attachments, thinks, speaks, acts, and does everything. What? It's cut off. It's like... I can't properly read. Hold on. I need to see what it says. Wait, did I not pin the... Hold on. Sorry for my noisy mouse. My noisy fucking mouse. Okay, here it is. Yeah. Smith and Tinkers, patent double action, extra responsive, thought creating, perfect talking, mechanical man, fitted with our special clockwork attachment, thinks, speaks, acts, and does everything but live. "Isn't he wonderful?" exclaimed the princess. "Yes, but here's more," said Betsy, reading from another engraved plate. Directions for using. For thinking, wind the clockwork man. Jesus fucking Christ. Sorry. For thinking, wind the clockwork man under his left arm, marked number 1. For speaking, wind the clockwork man under his right arm, marked number 2. For walking in action, wind clockwork man in the middle of his back, marked number 3. NB, this mechanism is guaranteed to work perfectly for 1,000 years. "If he's guaranteed for 1,000 years," said Polychrome, "he ought to work yet."
"Well, of course," replied Shaggy. "Let's wind him up."
In order to do this, they were obliged to set the copper man upon his feet in an upright position, and this was no easy task. He was inclined to topple over and had to be propped again and again. The girls assisted Shaggy, and at last Tik-Tok seemed to be balanced and stood alone upon his broad feet. Did they move the keyboards? I don't remember if Polly met Tik-Tok. Shaggy has for sure. Ray Ray, hi. You remembered your password for Twitch. Wait, did you have a different... Oh, wait, is this Rayshawn from YouTube? Hi, welcome to Twitch. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for coming over. Nice. Thank you so much. It's great to have you over here as well. Okay. Yes, said Shaggy, looking at the copper man carefully. This must be, indeed, my old friend Tik-Tok, whom I left ticking merrily in the land of Oz. But how he came to this lonely place and got into that old well is surely a mystery. Well, if we wind him, perhaps he will tell us, suggested Betsy. Here's the key, hanging to a hook on his back. What part of him shall I wind up first? Well, his thoughts, of course, said Polychrome, for it requires thought to speak or move intelligently. So Betsy wound him under his left arm, and at once little flashes of light began to show in the top of his head, which was proof that he had begun to think. Now then, said Shaggy, wind up his phonograph. What's that? She asked. Why, his talking machine. His thoughts may be interesting, but they don't tell us anything. Hi, Joshua. Hello. Thank you. So Betsy wound the copper man under his right arm, and then, from the interior of his copper body came in jerky tones the words, Many thanks. Hurrah! Cried Shaggy joyfully, and he slapped Tik-Tok upon the back in such a hearty manner that the copper man lost his balance and tumbled to the ground in a heap. But the clockwork that had enabled him to speak had been wound up, and he kept saying, Pick me up, pick me up, pick me up, until they had again raised him and balanced him upon his feet, when he added politely, Many... How did I used to do Tik-Tok's voice? Did I do like through a... I feel like I... Many thanks. How did I do his voice? You love the seducing voice? Which one? The robot one? Or the Shaggy man? Which one do you think is more seductive, Joshua? It was a low monotone? I'm Shaggy man. No. I can't remember. It's been a while. I did cut my hands, I think. Shaggy man, that's the seductive one? Oh, yes. Little lady, I have this magnet that will make you love me against your will. I mean... Low robotic monotone. Okay. let me just try to do it. I am the Shaggy man. Oh, no, wait, not Shaggy. I am Tik-Tok, the copper man. Like that? Was that kind of like that? Tik-Tok, the copper man. Okay, cool. Thank you, Shay. But the clockwork that had enabled him to speak had been wound up, and he kept saying, Pick me up, pick me up, pick me up, until they had again raised him and balanced him upon his feet, when he added politely, Many thanks. We won't be self-supporting until we wind up his action, remarked Shaggy. So Betsy wound it as tight as she could, for the key turned rather hard, and then Tik-Tok lifted his feet, marched around in a circle, and ended by stopping before the group and making them all a low bow. How in the world did you happen to be in that well when I left you safe in Oz? Inquired Shaggy.
It is a long story, replied Tik-Tok, but I'll tell it in a few words. After you had gone in search of your brother, Ozma saw you wandering in strange lands. Whenever she looked in her magic picture, and she also saw your brother in the Gnome King's cavern, so she sent me to tell you where to find your brother, and told me to help you if I could. The sorceress, Glinda the Good, transported me to this place in the wink of an eye. But here I met the Gnome King himself, old Ruggedo, who is called in these parts the Metal Monarch. Ruggedo knew what I had come for.
How? Why on earth would the Gnome King see this random copper mechanical man and be like, I know, you're here for that random human that I nabbed out of a mine shaft in Oklahoma. Like, how? How is that at all possible? This makes no sense. Okay.
Ruggedo knew what I had come for, and he was so angry that he threw me down the well. After my works ran down, I was helpless until you came along and pulled me out again. Many thanks.
This is indeed good news, said Shaggy. Well, I suspected that my brother was the prisoner of Ruggedo, but now I know it. Well, tell us, Tik-Tok, how shall we get to the Gnome King's underground cavern? Also, the way that Ozma saw Shaggy's brother imprisoned in the Gnome King's prison and could have used her magic belt to just, like, zap him to Oz. This is crazy. Could have just saved him. Yeah.
The best way is to walk, said Tik-Tok. We might crawl, or jump, or roll over and over until we get there, but the best way is to walk.
Why, no. But which road shall we take?
My machinery isn't made to tell that,
replied Tik-Tok. Do we have that? No, we knew that would be too easy. The one we have is that someone remembers and actually uses the belt. Because otherwise we've already checked retcon, yeah. Didn't mean to hurt you and your community. Oh, Well, yeah, those kinds of opinions are just really hurtful, and there's no need to share them. And I've got kind of a zero tolerance for like any kind of judgmental speak like that. We are here to have a comfy space, friendly community where people can feel safe and just read stories. So okay.
There is more than one entrance to the underground cavern, said Polychrome, but old Ruggedo has cleverly concealed every opening so that earth dwellers cannot intrude in his domain. If we find our way underground at all, it will be by chance. Well then, said Betsy, let us select any road, haphazard, and see where it leads us. Well, that seems sensible, declared the princess. It may require a lot of time for us to find Ruggedo, but we have more time than anything else.
If you keep me wound up,
said Tik-Tok,
I will last 1,000 years.
Well, and the only question to decide is which way to go, added Shaggy. looking first at one road and then at another. But while they stood, hesitating, a peculiar sound reached their ears. A sound like the tramping of many feet. Hi, non. "What's coming?" cried Betsy, and then she ran to the left-hand road and glanced along the path. "Why, it's an army!" she exclaimed. "What shall we do? Run or hide?"
"Stand still," commanded Shaggy. "I'm not afraid of an army. If they prove to be friendly, they can help us. If they're enemies, I'll show them the love magnet."
Okay, end of chapter. He could be a sorcerer that has a scrying mirror. Does he have a scry? He does have some magical objects. Well, Batman, I do appreciate the apology. I'm willing to give you another chance in chat, but like, no more, like, just kindness. I'm just looking for kindness in chat, you know? Like comments like you made earlier, not okay here, okay? Bro really said make love, not war. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness. This is... I sometimes forget, like, when we're reading other books and then we come back to an Oz book, the amount of voices that I need to, like, cycle through with Oz books is always extreme. Okay, bye, Batman. Okay. Chapter 8. Tik-Tok tackles a tough task. Is it just me, or is Bomb like extra into alliteration in these chapter titles? Yes, when they're saying Gnome King in this, it's spelled Nome. No G. No G. No, he didn't do it again. He just said goodbye. The later books do have a G, really? Oh. Alpha Misa. I am back home. Yep. After Bomb passed it, that's kind of too bad. Because I saw it as being something distinct from Gnome with a G. And that just makes it more confusing, actually. Okay. The voice you use for individual characters is so much more entertaining. I'm impressed that it doesn't seem to strain your voice more than it does. I mean, it does strain more than just normal reading, but anyway. Okay. Well, Shaggy and his companions stood, huddled in a group at one side. The army of Ugaboo was approaching along the pathway, the tramp of their feet being now and then accompanied by a dismal groan, as one of the officers stepped on a sharp stone or knocked his funny bone against his neighbor's sword handle. Then, out from among the trees, marched Private Files, bearing the banner of Ugaboo, which fluttered from a long pole. This pole he stuck in the ground just in front of the well, and then he cried, in a loud voice, "I hereby conquer this territory, in the name of Queen and so forth of Ugaboo, and all the inhabitants of the land, I proclaim her slaves." Some of the officers now stuck their heads out of the bushes and asked, "Is the coast clear, Private Files?" "There is no coast here," was the reply, "but all is well."
"I hope there's water in it,"
said General Cone, mustering courage to advance to the well. But just then, he caught a glimpse of Tik-Tok and Shaggy, and at once fell upon his knees, trembling and frightened, and cried out, "Mercy, kind enemies! Mercy! Spare us! We will be your slaves forever!" The other officers, who had now advanced into the clearing, likewise fell upon their knees and begged for mercy. Files turned around and, seeing the strangers for the first time, examined them with much curiosity. Then, discovering that 3 of the party were girls, he lifted his hat and made a polite bow. Brassimo, thank you for the follow. Welcome. Welcome. And Red Sea on Fire, so good to see you. Thank you for the streak. Aw. Congrats. Nice. Nice. Okay. What's all this? Demanded a harsh voice as Queen Anne reached the place and beheld her kneeling army. Permit us to introduce ourselves, replied Shaggy, stepping forward. This is Tik-Tok, the clockwork man, who works better than some meat people. And here is Princess Ozga of Roseland, just now unfortunately exiled from her kingdom of roses. I next present Polychrome, a sky fairy who lost her bow by an accident and can't find her way home. The small girl here is Betsy Bobbin, from some unknown earthly paradise called Oklahoma, and with her you see Mr. Hank, a mule with a long tail and a short temper. Puh, said Anne scornfully. A pretty lot of vagabonds you are indeed. All lost or strayed, I suppose, and not worth a queen's plundering. I'm sorry I've conquered you. But you haven't conquered us yet, called Betsy indignantly. No, agreed Files, that is a fact. But if my officers will kindly command me to conquer you, I will do so at once, after which we can stop arguing and converse more at our ease. The officers had by this time arisen from their knees and brushed the dust from their trousers. To them, the enemy did not look very fierce, so the generals and colonels and majors and captains gained courage to face them and began strutting in their most haughty manner. You must understand, said Anne, that I am the Queen of Ugaboo, and this is my invincible army. We are busy conquering the world, and since you seem to be a part of the world and are obstructing our journey, it is necessary for us to conquer you, unworthy though you may be of such a high honor. Yes, all right, replied Shaggy. Conquer us as often as you like. We don't mind. But we won't be anybody's slaves, added Betsy positively. We'll see about that, retorted the Queen angrily. Advance, Private Files, and bind the enemy hand and foot. But Private Files looked at pretty Betsy and fascinating Polychrome and the beautiful Rose Princess and shook his head. It would be impolite. I won't do it, he asserted. You must, cried Anne. It is your duty to obey orders. I haven't received any orders from my officers, objected the private. But now the generals shouted, Forward and bind the prisoners! And the colonels and majors and captains repeated the command, yelling it as loud as they could. Now, all this noise annoyed Hank, who had been eyeing the army of Ugaboo with strong disfavor. The mule now dashed forward and began backing upon the officers and kicking fierce and dangerous heels at them. The attack was so sudden that the officers scattered like dust in a whirlwind, dropping their swords as they ran and trying to seek refuge behind the trees and bushes. Betsy laughed joyously at the comical rout of the noble army, and Polychrome danced with glee. But Anne was furious at this ignoble defeat of her gallant forces by one small mule.
"Private Files, I command you to do your duty," she cried again,
and then she herself ducked to escape the mule's heels, for Hank made no distinction in favor of a lady who was an open enemy. Betsy grabbed her champion by the forelock, however, and so held him fast, and when the officers saw that the mule was restrained from further attacks, they crept fearfully back and picked up their discarded swords.
"Private Files, seize and bind these prisoners!"
screamed the Queen.
"No,"
said Files, throwing down his gun and removing the knapsack which was strapped to his back.
"I resign my position as the army of Ugaboo. I enlisted to fight the enemy and become a hero, but if you want someone to bind harmless girls, you'll have to hire another private."
Then he walked over to the others and shook hands with Shaggy and Tik-Tok.
"Treason!"
shrieked Anne, and all the officers echoed her cry.
"Nonsense," said Files. "I've the right to resign if I want to."
"Indeed you haven't," retorted the Queen.
"If you resign, it will break up my army, and then I cannot conquer the world."
She now turned to the officers and said,
"I must ask you to do me a favor. I know it is undignified in officers to fight, but unless you immediately capture Private Files and force him to obey my orders, there will be no plunder for any of us. Also, it is likely you will all suffer the pangs of hunger, and when we meet a powerful foe, you are liable to be captured and made slaves."
Well, the prospect of this awful fate so frightened the officers that they drew their swords and rushed upon Files, who stood beside Shaggy in a truly ferocious manner. The next instant, however, they halted, and again fell upon their knees, for there, before them, was the glistening love magnet, held in the hand of the smiling Shaggy Man, and the sight of this magic talisman at once won the heart of every Ugabooite. Even Anne saw the love magnet, and, forgetting all enmity and anger, threw herself upon Shaggy and embraced him lovingly. Oh, man. Oh my goodness. He's so gross. What's a love magnet? It's just like, it looks like a little silver horseshoe, and when people see it, they love the person holding it against their own will. It's really problematic. It's really problematic. Okay. Quite disconcerted by this unexpected effect of the magnet. What do you mean, bro? That's what it does. Shaggy disengaged himself from the Queen's encircling arms and quickly hid the talisman in his pocket. The adventurers from Ugaboo were now his firm friends, and there was no more talk about conquering and binding any of his party. "If you insist on conquering anyone," said Shaggy, "you may march with me to the underground kingdom of Ruggedo." "Wait, Ruggedo? To conquer the world, as you've set out to do, you must conquer everyone under its surface, as well as those upon its surface, and no one in all the world needs conquering so much as Ruggedo." "Who is he?" asked Anne. "Oh, the Metal Monarch, King of the Gnomes." "Was he rich?" inquired Major Stockings in an anxious voice. "Oh, of course," answered Shaggy. "He owns all the metal that lies underground. Gold, silver, copper, brass, and tin. We has an idea he also owns all the metals above ground, for he says all metal was once a part of his kingdom. So, by conquering the Metal Monarch, you will win all the riches in the world." Oh, Artax, we already got the Sussy Mind Control bingo square. There's that slut. Hi, Lemon Slut. Hello, hello. How you doing? Brass is an alloy. It's not found in the ground. How embarrassing. How embarrassing for Bomb / the Shaggy Man. Hi, Powder. Welcome back. How are you doing? It's good to see you. Exclaimed General Apple, having a deep sigh. Oh, that would be plunder worth our while. Let's conquer him, Your Majesty. The Queen looked reproachfully at Files, who was sitting next to the lovely princess and whispering in her ear. Alas, said Anne, I no longer have an army. I have plenty of brave officers, indeed, but no private soldier for them to command. Therefore I cannot conquer Ruggedo and win all his wealth. Why don't you make one of your officers the private? Said Shaggy. But at once every officer began to protest, and the Queen of Ugaboo shook her head as she replied, That is impossible. A private soldier must be a terrible fighter, and my officers are unable to fight. They are exceptionally brave in commanding others to fight, but could not themselves meet the enemy and conquer. Very true, Your Majesty, said Colonel Plum eagerly. There are many kinds of bravery, and one cannot be expected to possess them all. Why, myself am brave as a lion in all ways, until it comes to fighting. But then my nature revolts. Fighting is unkind and liable to be injurious to others, so, well, being a gentleman, I never fight. Nor I, shouted each of the other officers. You see, said Anne, how helpless I am. Had not Private Files proved himself a traitor and a deserter, I would gladly have conquered this Ruggedo. But an army without a private soldier is like a bee without a stinger. I'm not a traitor, Your Majesty, protested Files. I resigned in a proper manner, not liking the job. But there are plenty of people to take my place. Why not make Shaggy Man the private soldier? He might be killed, said Anne, looking tenderly at Shaggy, for he is mortal and able to die. If anything happened to him, it would break my heart. Well, it would hurt me worse than that, declared Shaggy. You must admit, Your Majesty, that I am commander of this expedition, for it is my brother we are seeking, rather than plunder. But I and my companions would like the assistance of your army, and if you help us to conquer Ruggedo, and to rescue my brother from captivity, we will allow you to keep all the gold and jewels and other plunder you may find. Well, this prospect was so tempting that the officers began whispering together, and presently Colonel Cheese said, Your Majesty, by combining our brains, we have just evolved a most brilliant idea. We will make the Clockwork Man the private soldier. Who? Me? Asked Tik-Tok. Not for a single second. I cannot fight, and you must not forget that it was Ruggedo who threw me in the well. But at that time, you had no gun, said Polychrome. Sorry. Damn. We got another subculture. I don't have prunes. I left the prunes over there. At that time, you had no gun, said Polychrome. But if you join the army of Ugaboo, you will carry the gun that Mr. Files used. A soldier must be able to run as well as to fight, protested Tik-Tok. And if my works run down, as they often do, I could neither run nor fight. Well, I'll keep you wound up, Tik-Tok, promised Betsy. Well, it isn't a bad idea, said Shaggy. Tik-Tok will make an ideal soldier, for nothing can injure him except a
sledgehammer. And since a private soldier seems to be necessary to this army, Tik-Tok is the only one of our party fitted to undertake the job.
Hi, Bike Guy, welcome back. Yeah, he did. He kicked a bunch of wheeler ass. He just started spinning his torso, and his metal arms just like, Buddha, you shut your mouth. You absolute troll. Okay.
What must I do? Asked Tik-Tok.
Obey orders, replied Anne. When the officers command you to do anything, you must do it. That is all.
And that's enough, too, said Files. Do I get a salary? Inquired Tik-Tok.
You get your share of the plunder, answered the Queen.
Yes, remarked Files. 1/2 of the plunder goes to Queen Anne. The other half is divided amongst the officers, and the private gets the rest. That will be satisfactory, said Tik-Tok, picking up the gun and examining it wonderingly, for he had never seen such a weapon. Then Anne strapped the knapsack to Tik-Tok's copper back and said, Now we are ready to march to Ruggedo's kingdom and conquer it. Officers, give the command to march. Fall in, yelled the generals, drawing their swords. Fall in, cried the colonels, drawing their swords. Fall in, shouted the majors, drawing their swords. Fall in, bawled the captains, drawing their swords. Tik-Tok looked at them, and then around him in surprise. Fall in what? The well? He asked. No, said Queen Anne, you must fall in marching order. Cannot I march without falling in it? Asked the Clockwork Man. Shoulder your gun and stand ready to march, advised Files. So Tik-Tok held the gun straight and stood still. What next? He asked. The Queen turned to Shaggy. Which road leads to the Metal Monarch's cavern? We don't know, Your Majesty, was the reply. But this is absurd, said Anne with a frown. If we can't get to Ruggedo, it is certain that we can't conquer him. You are right, admitted Shaggy, but I did not say we could not get to him. We have only to discover the way, and that was the matter we were considering when you and your magnificent army arrived here. Well then, get busy and discover it, snapped the Queen. That was no easy task. They all stood looking from one road to another in perplexity. The paths radiated from the little clearing like the rays of the midday sun, and each path seemed like all the others. Files and the Rose Princess, who had by this time become good friends, advanced a little way along one of the roads and found that it was bordered by pretty wild flowers. Why don't you ask the flowers to tell you the way? He said to his companion. The flowers? Returned the princess, surprised at the question. Of course, said Files. The field flowers must be second cousins to a rose princess, and I believe if you ask them, they will tell you. She looked more closely at the flowers. There were hundreds of white daisies, golden buttercups, bluebells, and daffodils growing by the roadside, and each flower head was firmly set upon its slender but stout stem. There were even a few wild roses scattered here and there, and perhaps it was the sight of these that gave the princess courage to ask that important question. She dropped to her knees, facing the flowers, and extended both her arms pleadingly toward them. Tell me, pretty cousins, she said in her sweet, gentle voice,
Which way will lead us to the kingdom of Ruggedo, the Gnome King? At once, all the stems bent gracefully to the right, and the flower heads nodded once, twice, thrice in that direction.
That's it, cried Files joyfully. Now we know the way.
Ozga rose to her feet and looked wonderingly at the field flowers, which had now resumed their upright position. Was it the wind, do you think? She asked in a low whisper.
No, indeed, replied Files. There is not a breath of wind stirring, but these lovely blossoms are indeed your cousins, and answered your question at once, as I knew they would. End of chapter. Oof. Oh, big stretch. Okay. Why are we talking about inertia? Oh, Files is definitely trying to get it on with the Rose Girl. 100%. Ew, and Queen Anne has a big old crush on the Shaggy Man. Do we like Betsy better than Dorothy? I mean, yeah, Dorothy is an absolute little biatch. So far, the only issue with Betsy is that she doesn't seem to be fazed by anything, like even catastrophe, which makes me worry that she doesn't really have empathy. But she hasn't been cruel yet. She just is unflappable. I don't know. She's a sociopath. It may be. Wow, Buddha. You're quite full of yourself, aren't you? Okay. Let's jump into the next one. Chapter 9. Also, I'm really upset at the renaming. I thought Roquat the Red was such a better name than Ruggedo. Dorothy does set the bar really low. No one else contains us unless they eat us. Yep. Okay. Miss Snapester, hello, good to see you again. Yeah, Roquat? Like that was good. That was good. Ruggedo is so dumb as a name. Okay. Also, yeah, Balm is all in with the alliterations for these chapter titles. Chapter 9. Ruggedo's rage is rash and reckless. It does sound like a Mario villain. The Metal Monarch is not bad as a title, yeah. Okay. The way taken by the adventurers led uphill and down dale and wound here and there in a fashion that seemed aimless. But always it drew nearer to a range of low mountains, and Files said more than once that he was certain the entrance to Ruggedo's cavern would be found among these rugged hills. In this, he was quite correct. Far underneath the nearest mountain was a gorgeous chamber, hollowed from the solid rock, the walls and roof of which glittered with thousands of magnificent jewels. Here, on a throne of virgin gold, sat the famous Gnome King, dressed in splendid robes and wearing a superb crown cut from a single blood-red ruby. That honestly sounds awesome. A crown cut from a single ruby. But also, like, what, his throne room is just kind of like an open cave? Like, I don't know, I would have thought it would be, like, harder to get to. Ruggedo, the monarch of all the metals and precious stones of the underground world, was a round little man with a flowing white beard, a red face, bright eyes, and a scowl that covered all his forehead. One would think, to look at him, that he ought to be jolly. One might think, considering his enormous wealth, that he ought to be happy. But this was not the case. The metal monarch was surly and cross because mortals had dug so much treasure out of the earth and kept it above ground, where all the power of Ruggedo and his gnomes was unable to recover it. He hated not only the mortals, but also the fairies who lived upon the earth or above it. And instead of being content with the riches he still possessed, he was unhappy because he did not own all the gold and jewels in the world. Yeah. Ruggedo had been nodding, half asleep in his chair, when suddenly he sat upright, uttered a roar of rage, and began pounding upon a huge gong that stood beside him. Didn't he have his mind wiped? Wait, he did have his mind wiped, yes. So, because a couple of books ago, or was it the last book, he tried to invade Oz and take over the Emerald City by tunneling underneath the desert and underneath Oz and then like come right up inside the Emerald City. And Ozma did absolutely jack shit until the last minute and then basically put a spell on them to make them thirsty, and the only water they could drink was water that made them forget. And then they were all like, what are we doing here? And they wandered back home. She's such an unfit ruler. Okay. I'd forgotten that they had had their minds wiped. That's true. They forgot their names even. That's true. Okay, so, and then he renamed himself Ruggedo. Okay. Pounding on a huge gong that stood beside him. The sound filled the vast cavern and penetrated to many caverns beyond, where countless thousands of gnomes were working at their unending tasks, hammering out gold and silver and other metals, or melting ores in great furnaces, or polishing glittering gems. The gnomes trembled at the sound of the king's gong and whispered fearfully to one another that something unpleasant was sure to happen, but none dared pause in his task. The heavy curtains of cloth of gold were pushed aside, and Calico, the king's high chamberlain, entered the royal presence. Yeah, that retcon does have continuity, but we get to keep the retcon ticked off because there's also the retcon that the Shaggy Man has to show the love magnet for it to work, whereas previously it just had to be on his person. He never had to like pull it out and wave it around before. Okay.
You want to play the part of Calico, the King's High Chamberlain? You sound great.
What's up, Your Majesty? He asked with a wide yawn, for he had just wakened.
Up,
roared Ruggedo, stamping his feet viciously.
These foolish mortals are up, that's what, and they want to come down.
Down here? Inquired Calico.
Yes.
How do you know? Continued the Chamberlain, yawning again.
I feel it in my bones, said Ruggedo. I can always feel it when those hateful earth crawlers draw near to my kingdom. I am positive, Calico, that mortals are this very minute on their way here to annoy me. And I hate mortals. I hate mortals more than I do catnip tea.
Well, what's to be done? Demanded the gnome.
Look through your spyglass and see where the invaders are,
commanded the king. So Calico went to a tube in the wall of the rock and put his eye up to it. And the tube ran from the cavern up to the side of the mountain and turned several curves and corners. But as it was a magic spyglass, Calico was able to see through it just as easily as if it had been straight.
"Oh, said he. "Why see 'em, your majesty?"
What do they look like?
Inquired the monarch.
Well, that's a hard question to answer, for a queerer assortment of creatures I never yet beheld,
replied the gnome.
However, such a collection of curiosities may prove dangerous. Well, there's a copper man, worked by machinery.
That's only Tik-Tok,
said Ruggedo.
Well, I'm not afraid of him. Why, only the other day I met the fellow and threw him down a well.
Then someone must have pulled him out again, said Calico. And, there's a little girl.
Dorothy?
said Ruggedo, jumping up in fear.
No, some other girl. In fact, well, there are several girls of various sizes, but, Dorothy's not with them, nor is Ozma.
Well, that's good,
exclaimed the king, sighing in relief. Calico still had his eye to the spyglass.
I see, said he, an army of men from Ugaboo. Well, they're all officers and carry swords, and there's a shaggy man who seems very harmless, and a little donkey with big ears.
Pooh,
cried Ruggedo, snapping his fingers in scorn.
Well, I've no fear of such a mob as that. A dozen of my gnomes can destroy them all in a jiffy.
I'm not so sure of that, said Calico. The people of Ugaboo are hard to destroy, and I believe the Rose Princess is a fairy. Well, as for Polychrome, you know very well that the Rainbow's daughter cannot be injured by a gnome.
Polychrome? Was she among them?
asked the king.
Yes, I've just recognized her.
Oh, then these people are coming here on no peaceful errand,
declared Ruggedo, scowling fiercely.
In fact, no one ever comes here on a peaceful errand. I hate everybody, and everybody hates me.
Very true,
said Calico.
I must in some way prevent these people from reaching my dominions. Where are they now?
Oh, just now they are crossing the rubber country, Your Majesty.
Good, good. Are the magnetic rubber wires in working order?
I think so, replied Calico. Is it your royal will that we will have some fun with these invaders?
It is,
answered Ruggedo.
I want to teach them a lesson they will never forget.
Oh my goodness. Hi, Dylan. Now, Shaggy had no idea that he was in a rubber country, nor had any of his companions. Well, they noticed that everything around them was of a dull gray color, and that the path upon which they walked was soft and springy, yet they had no suspicion that the rocks and trees were rubber, and even the path they trod was made of rubber. Presently they came to a brook where sparkling water dashed through a deep channel and rushed away between high rocks far down the mountainside. Across the brook were stepping stones, so placed that travelers might easily leap from one to another, and in that manner cross the water to the farther bank. Tik-Tok was marching ahead, followed by his officers and Queen Anne. After them came Betsy Bobbin and Hank, Polychrome and Shaggy, and last of all, the Rose Princess with Files. The Clockwork Man saw the stream and the stepping stones and, without making a pause, placed his foot upon the first stone. The result was astonishing. First, he sank down in the soft rubber, which then rebounded and sent Tik-Tok soaring high in the air, where he turned a succession of flip-flops and alighted upon a rubber rock far in the rear of the party. Now, General Apple did not see Tik-Tok bound so quickly had he disappeared. Therefore, he also stepped upon the stone, which, you will guess, was connected with Calico's magnetic rubber wire, and instantly shot upward like an arrow. General Cone came next and met with a like fate, but the others now noticed that something was wrong, and with one accord they halted the column and looked back along the path. There was Tik-Tok, still bounding from one rubber rock to another, each time rising a less distance from the ground. And there was General Apple, bounding away in another direction, his three-cornered hat jammed over his eyes and his long sword thumping him upon the arms and head as it swung this way and that. And there also appeared General Cone, who had struck a rubber rock head foremost and was so crumpled up that his round body looked more like a bouncing ball than the form of a man. Betsy laughed merrily at the strange sight. It sounds like the last guy is like head trauma and Betsy's just laughing. I think she's a sociopath. Betsy laughed merrily at the strange sight, and Polychrome echoed her laughter. But Ozga was grave and wondering, while Queen Anne became angry at seeing the chief officers of the army of Ugaboo bounding around in so undignified a manner. Oh, she shouted to them to stop, but they were unable to obey, even though they would have been glad to do so. Finally, however, they all ceased bounding and managed to get upon their feet and rejoin the army. "Why did you do that?" demanded Anne, who seemed greatly provoked.
"Don't ask them why," said Shaggy earnestly. "Well, I knew you would ask them why, but you ought not to do it. The reason is plain. These stones are rubber. Therefore, they are not stones. These rocks around us are rubber, and therefore, they are not rocks. Or even this path is not a path. It's rubber. Unless we are very careful, Your Majesty, we are all likely to get the bounce, just as your poor officers and Tik-Tok did."
Slightly Sinful, hello, welcome. How you doing? "Then let's be careful," remarked Files, who was full of wisdom. But Polychrome wanted to test the quality of the rubber, so she began dancing. Every step sent her higher and higher into the air, so that she resembled a big butterfly fluttering lightly. Presently she made a great bound and bounded way across the stream, landing lightly and steadily on the other side. "Hi, Ubercoo, it's good to see you." Sociopath Betsy would be a cool outlaw name.
"There's no rubber over here," she called to them. "Suppose you all try to bound over the stream without touching the stepping stones."
Anne and her officers were reluctant to undertake such a risky adventure, but Betsy at once grasped the value of the suggestion and began jumping up and down until she found herself bounding almost as high as Polychrome had done. Then she suddenly leaned forward, and the next bound took her easily across the brook, where she alighted by the side of the Rainbow's Daughter.
"Come on, Hank,"
called the girl, and the donkey tried to obey. Well, he managed to bound pretty high, but when he tried to bound across the stream, he misjudged the distance and fell with a splash into the middle of the water. He wailed, struggling toward the far bank. Betsy rushed forward to help him out, but when the mule stood safely beside her, she was amazed to find that he was not wet at all.
"It's dry water,"
said Polychrome, dipping her hand into the stream and showing how the water fell from it and left it perfectly dry.
"Well, in that case," returned Betsy, "they can all walk through the water."
She called to Ozga and Shaggy to wade across, assuring them that the water was shallow and would not wet them. At once they followed her advice, avoiding the rubber stepping stones, and made the crossing with ease. This encouraged the entire party to wade through the dry water, and in a few minutes all had assembled on the bank and renewed their journey along the path that led to the Gnome King's dominions. How? Oh, right, magic. Yep. When Calico again looked through his magic spyglass, he exclaimed,
"Bad luck, Your Majesty. All the invaders have passed the rubber country and are now fast approaching the entrance to your caverns."
Ruggedo raved and stormed at the news, and his anger was so great that several times, as he strode up and down his jeweled cavern, he paused to kick Calico upon his shins, which were so sensitive that the poor gnome howled with pain. Wait, let me double check the bingo board. We do have Gnome King physically attacks his followers. I think this counts, right? He is physically attacking one of his followers. I think we're gonna bingo that. Let's wait till the chapter break and then we'll bingo that. Amazing. No abuse. Finally, the king said,
"There's no help for it. We must drop these audacious invaders down the hollow tube."
Calico gave a jump at this and looked at his master wonderingly.
"Oh, if you do that, Your Majesty," he said, "you will make Tititi Hoochoo very angry."
"Never mind that,"
retorted Ruggedo.
Tititi Hoochie lives on the other side of the world, so what do I care for his anger?
Calico shuddered and uttered a little groan.
"Remember his terrible powers," he pleaded, "and remember that he warned you the last time you slid people through the hollow tube, that if you did it again, he would take vengeance upon you."
The metal monarch walked up and down in silence, thinking deeply.
"Of two dangers," said he, "it is wise to choose the least. What do you suppose the invaders want?"
"Well, let the long-eared hearer listen to them,"
suggested Calico.
"Call him at once,"
commanded Ruggedo eagerly. Hi, Winnie. Hello. Listening and writing a college ethics essay. Oh, that's good. Well, welcome. It's good to have you here. I'm sorry if this is weirdly distracting. Durko, thank you for that 50 stream streak. Durko, if you are still around when we're done reading, that is a number that earns you a name trace. Shuja, hello. Okay, good, Winnie. That's awesome. Yeah, TTT Hoochoo. Yeah, I don't know. Tititi Hoochoo. Okay, so in a few minutes, there entered the cavern a gnome with enormous ears who bowed low before the king. Artex, thank you for those 100 biddies. Thank you.
"Strangers are approaching," said Ruggedo, "and I wish to know their errand. Listen carefully to their talk, and tell me why they are coming here, and what for."
The gnome bowed again and spread out his great ears, swaying them gently up and down and back and forth. For half an hour he stood silent, in an attitude of listening, while both the king and Calico grew impatient at the delay. At last the long-eared hearer spoke.
Shaggy Man is coming here to rescue his brother from captivity, said he.
The ugly one, exclaimed Ruggedo. Well, Shaggy Man may have his ugly brother for all I care. He's too lazy to work and is always getting in my way. Where is the ugly one now, Calico?
Well, the last time your majesty stumbled over the prisoner, you commanded me to send him to the Metal Forest, which I did. I suppose he's still there.
Very good. The invaders will have a hard time finding the Metal Forest,
said the king with a grin of malicious delight.
For half the time I can't find it myself. Yet I created the forest and made every tree out of gold and silver, so as to keep the precious metals in a safe place and out of the reach of mortals. But tell me, Hera, do the strangers want anything else?
Yes, indeed they do, returned the gnome. The army of Ugaboo is determined to capture all the rich metals and rare jewels of your kingdom, and the officers and their queen have arranged to divide the spoils and carry them away.
When he heard this, Ruggedo uttered a bellow of rage and began dancing up and down, rolling his eyes, clicking his teeth together, and swinging his arms furiously. Then, in an ecstasy of anger, he seized the long ears of the hearer and pulled and twisted them cruelly. But Calico grabbed up the king's scepter and rapped him over the knuckles with it, so that Ruggedo let go the ears and began to chase his royal chamberlain around the throne. The hero took advantage of this opportunity to slip away from the cavern and escape. And after the king had tired himself out chasing Calico, he threw himself into his throne and panted for breath, while he glared wickedly at his defiant subject.
You'd better save your strength to fight this enemy, suggested Calico. There will be a terrible battle when the army of Ugaboo gets here.
The army won't get here, said the king, still coughing and panting. I'll drop 'em down the hollow tube, every man Jack and every girl Jill of 'em.
And defy Tititi Hoochoo?
said Calico.
Yes, go at once to my chief magician and order him to turn the path toward the hollow tube, and to make the top of the tube invisible, so they'll all fall into it.
Calico went away, shaking his head, for he thought Ruggedo was making a great mistake. He found the magician and had the path twisted so that it led directly to the opening of the hollow tube, and this opening he made invisible. Having obeyed the orders of his master, the royal chamberlain went to his private room and began to write letters of recommendation of himself, stating that he was an honest man, a good servant, and a small eater.
Well, pretty soon, he said to himself, I shall have to look for another job, for it is certain that Ruggedo has ruined himself by this reckless defiance of the mighty Tititi Hoochoo. And in seeking a job, nothing is so effective as a letter of recommendation.
He is working on his resume. Oh, Dustin, thank you. That's kind, thank you. And that is the end of that chapter. Oh my goodness. Okay, wait, so we need to tick something off our bingo board. Okay. There we go, we got our bingo board. And we have got this one down here. The Gnome King physically attacks his followers. Yes, he did. Okay. Oh my goodness. Let's see, which other ones? Are we close to? We've had cameos, but so far not pointless cameos. Mean for no reason. Do you mean like Ruggedo? I think that is like his personality, so that's a little different. We've got the sussy mind control, which had to do with the love magnet, and we've also got the love magnet itself. We've got the new fairyland. Retconning, horrors beyond comprehension, threat of attempted execution. I mean, honestly, like, Bomb is so over this shit. That's tempting. Ozma's a shitty ruler. I mean, Betsy laughing at pain. Yeah, I think she's just... I don't think she's been, like, actually, like, cruel yet. She's just... I don't know what she is. Doesn't have a lot of personality. I bet we're gonna get this one. Tik-Tok winds down at a dramatic moment. We'll see. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's keep going. Bomb is over the shit happens in the introduction. Kind of does. Yeah, it's just kind of the background energy. Let's see, how long have we been going for? How about, should we read one more or should we wrap it up here? What are you guys thinking? They keep making me write these fucking books. I mean, no, but Bomb, you were just bankrupt. Nonchalant about taking autonomy away. Do you mean with the love magnet? We kind of filed that under sussy mind control, but because it is specifically bodily autonomy. Have you ever read The Time Machine? Yes, Winnie, we did read it. It was a while ago. I need to get it edited and up on YouTube, but we did read it. Yeah. Depends on how the Quasso feels. I'm gonna need to take a break soon. Let's read one more chapter. That'll be chapter 10, and then I'll take a little bit of a break. We will keep going on Twitch, but we'll wrap up on YouTube at that point. The Queen calling them slaves. Honestly, we should have put one in there that's just like, Bomb keeps writing about slavery. Like, why are there Oz Marvel comments? I don't know. I don't know, Daxus. Okay, let's read one more chapter. Okay. To read the Dune. Yes, I know, I would, but it's not in the public domain. Artex, thank you for the 100 biddies. Thank you, thank you. Alright. Chapter 10. A terrible tumble through a tube. I suppose that Polychrome, and perhaps Queen Anne and her army, might have been able to dispel the enchantment of Ruggedo's chief magician, had they known that danger lay in their pathway. For the Rainbow's daughter was a fairy, and as Ugaboo is a part of the land of Oz, its inhabitants cannot easily be deceived by such common magic as the Gnome King could command. But no one suspected any especial danger until after they had entered Ruggedo's cavern, and so they were journeying along in quite a contented manner, when Tik-Tok, who marched ahead, suddenly disappeared. The officers thought he must have turned a corner, so they kept on their way, and all of them, likewise, disappeared, one after another. Queen Anne was rather surprised at this, and in hastening forward to learn the reason, she also vanished from sight. Betsy Bobbin had tired her feet by walking, so now she was riding upon the back of the stout little mule, facing backward and talking to Shaggy and Polychrome, who were just behind. Suddenly, Hank pitched forward and began falling, and Betsy would have tumbled over his head had she not grabbed the mule's shaggy neck with both arms and held on for dear life. All around was darkness, and they were not falling directly downward, but seemed to be sliding along a steep incline. Hank's hoofs were resting upon some smooth substance over which he slid with the swiftness of the wind. Once Betsy's heels flew up and struck a similar substance overhead. They were, indeed, descending the hollow tube that led to the other side of the world. Mr. Nipple Twister, thank you for the follow. Welcome.
Stop! Hank, stop!
Cried the girl, but Hank only uttered a plaintive for it was impossible for him to obey. After several minutes had passed and no harm had befallen them, Betsy gained courage. She could see nothing at all, nor could she hear anything except the rush of air past her ears as they plunged downward along the tube. Whether she and Hank were alone or the others were with them, she could not tell. But had someone been able to take a flashlight photograph of the tube at that time, a most curious picture would have resulted. There was Tik-Tok, flat upon his back and sliding head foremost down the incline. And there were the officers of the army of Ugaboo, all tangled up in a confused crowd, flapping their arms and trying to shield their faces from the clanking swords, which swung back and forth during the swift journey and pommeled everyone within their reach. Now followed Queen Anne, who had struck the tube in a sitting position and went flying along with a dash and abandon that thoroughly bewildered the poor lady, who had no idea what had happened to her. Then, a little distance away, but unseen by the others in the inky darkness, slid Betsy and Hank, while behind them were Shaggy and Polychrome, and finally, Files and the princess. Mr. Nipple Twister, thank you for the brand new T1 sub. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Glad you're enjoying the story. Thank you so much. Now, when first they tumbled into the tube, all were too dazed to think clearly. But the trip was a long one, because the cavity led straight through the earth to a place just opposite the Gnome King's dominions, and long before the adventurers got to the end, they had begun to recover their wits.
"Oh, this is awful, Hank," cried Betsy in a loud voice,
and Queen Anne heard her and called out, "Are you safe, Betsy?"
"Mercy, no," answered the little girl. "How could anyone be safe when she's going about 60 miles a minute?"
Then, after a pause, she added,
"But where do you suppose we're going to, Your Majesty?"
"Oh, don't ask her that. Please don't,"
said Shaggy, who was not too far away to overhear them.
"Please don't ask me why, either."
Buddha, thank you for the 100 biddies. Oh, Nick, thank you for the lurk.
"Why?" said Betsy.
"No one can tell where we are going until we get there,"
replied Shaggy, and then he yelled, "Ouch!" for Polychrome had overtaken him and was now sitting on his head. The Rainbow's Daughter laughed merrily, and so infectious was this joyous laugh that Betsy echoed it, and Hank said, "Hee-haw," in a mild and sympathetic tone of voice.
"I'd like to know where and when we'll arrive, just the same,"
exclaimed the little girl.
"Be patient, and you'll find out, my dear," said Polychrome. "But isn't this an odd experience? Here am I, whose home is in the skies, making a journey through the center of the earth, where I never expected to be."
"How do you know we're in the center of the earth?" asked Betsy, her voice trembling a little through nervousness.
"Why, we can't be anywhere else," replied Polychrome. "I've often heard of this passage, which was once built by a magician who was a great traveler. He thought it would save him the bother of going around the earth's surface, but he tumbled through the tube so fast that he shot out at the other end and hit a star in the sky, which at once exploded."
"The star exploded?" asked Betsy wonderingly.
"Yes, the magician hit it so hard." And what became of the magician? Inquired the girl. No one knows that, answered Polychrome, but I don't think it matters much.
It matters a good deal if we also hit the stars when we come out, said Queen Anne with a moan.
Don't worry, advised Polychrome. I believe the magician was going the other way, and probably he went much faster than we are going.
Oh, he's fast enough to suit me, remarked Shaggy, gently removing Polychrome's heel from his left eye. Couldn't you manage to fall all by yourself, my dear?
I'll try, laughed the Rainbow's Daughter.
All this time, they were swiftly falling through the tube, and it was not so easy for them to talk as you may imagine when you read their words. But although they were so helpless and altogether in the dark as to their fate, the fact that they were able to converse at all cheered them considerably. Files and Ozga were also conversing as they clung tightly to one another, and the young fellow bravely strove to reassure the princess, although he was terribly frightened, both on her account and on his own. Now, an hour under such trying circumstances is a very long time, and for more than an hour they continued their fearful journey. Then, just as they began to fear the tube would never end, Tik-Tok popped out into broad daylight and, after making a graceful circle in the air, fell, with a splash, into a great marble fountain. Out came the officers in quick succession, tumbling heels over head and striking the ground in many undignified attitudes. Okay, there's a new person, and I'm trying to scroll ahead. There is no hint as to what this person should sound. I went so many pages ahead, I have no idea what this new person should sound like, so I may have to change their voice at some point. I guess an exploding star is a quick end. Okay. Hey, Noodles.
For the love of sassafras,
exclaimed a peculiar person who was hoeing pink violets in a garden.
What can all this mean?
For an answer, Queen Anne sailed up from the tube, took a ride through the air as high as the treetops, and alighted squarely on top of the peculiar person's head, smashing a jeweled crown over his eyes and tumbling him to the ground. Now, the mule was heavier and had Betsy clinging to his back, so he did not go so high up. Fortunately for his little rider, he struck the ground upon his 4 feet. Betsy was jarred a trifle, but not hurt, and when she looked around her, she saw the queen and the peculiar person struggling together upon the ground, where the man was trying to choke Anne, and she had both hands in his bushy hair and was pulling with all her might. Some of the officers, when they got upon their feet, hastened to separate the combatants and sought to restrain the peculiar person so that he could not attack their queen again. By this time, Shaggy, Polychrome, Ozga, and Files had all arrived and were curiously examining the strange country in which they found themselves, and which they knew to be exactly on the opposite side of the world from the place where they had fallen into the tube. It was a lovely place indeed, and seemed to be the garden of some great prince, for through the vistas of trees and shrubbery could be seen the towers of an immense castle. But as yet the only inhabitant to greet them was the peculiar person just mentioned, who had shaken off the grasp of the officers without effort, and was now trying to pull the battered crown from off his eyes. Shaggy, who was always polite, helped him to do this, and when the man was free and could see again, he looked at his visitors with evident amazement. "Well, well, well," he exclaimed. "Where did you come from, and how did you get here?" Now Betsy tried to answer him, for Queen Anne was surly and silent.
Well, I can't say exactly where we came from, 'cause I don't know the name of the place, said the girl. But the way we got here was through the hollow tube.
Don't call it a hollow tube, please, exclaimed the peculiar person in an irritated tone of voice. If it's a tube, it's sure to be hollow. I like this person.
Why?
Asked Betsy. Because all tubes are made that way. But this tube is private property, and everyone is forbidden to fall into it.
Well, we didn't do it on purpose,
Explained Betsy,
and Polychrome added, I'm quite sure that Ruggedo, the Gnome King, pushed us down that tube.
Ah, Ruggedo. Did you say Ruggedo? Cried the man, becoming much excited. That is what she said, replied Shaggy, and I believe she is right. Well, we were on our way to conquer the Gnome King, when suddenly we fell into the tube. Then you are enemies of Ruggedo. Oh, sorry. Then you are enemies of Ruggedo, inquired the peculiar person.
Well, not exactly enemies,
said Betsy, a little puzzled by the question, because we don't know him at all, but we started out to conquer him, which isn't as friendly as might be. True, agreed the man. He looked thoughtfully from one to another of them for a while, and then he turned his head over his shoulder and said, Never mind the fire and pincers, my good brothers. It will be best to take these strangers to the private citizen. Very well, Tubikins, responded a voice, deep and powerful, that seemed to come out of the air, for the speaker was invisible. All our friends gave a jump at this. Even Polychrome was so startled that her gauze draperies fluttered like a banner in the breeze. Shaggy shook his head and sighed. Queen Anne looked very unhappy. The officers clung to each other, trembling violently. Hold on, I just need a little bit of lip balm. My lips get very chapped when I read. But soon they gained courage to look more closely at the peculiar person. But don't say that. Not that kind of balm. As he was a type of all the inhabitants of this extraordinary land, whom they afterward met, I will try to tell you what he looked like. Good night, Zen. Sleep well. His face was beautiful, but lacked expression. His eyes were large and blue in color, and his teeth finely formed and white as snow. His hair was black and bushy and seemed inclined to curl at the ends. So far no one could find any fault with his appearance. He wore a robe of scarlet, which did not cover his arms and extended no lower than his bare knees. On the bosom of his robe was embroidered a terrible dragon's head, as horrible to look at as the man was beautiful. His arms and legs were left bare, and the skin of one arm was bright yellow, and the skin of the other arm a vivid green. He had one blue leg and one pink one, while both his feet, which showed through the open sandals he wore, were jet black. Betsy could not decide whether these gorgeous colors were dyes or the natural tints of the skin. But while she was thinking it over, the man, who had been called Tubikins, said, Follow me to the residence, all of you. But just then a voice exclaimed, Here's another of them, Tubikins, lying in the water of the fountain.
Gracious, cried Betsy. It must be Tik-Tok, and he'll drown.
Water is a bad thing for his clockworks, anyhow, agreed Shaggy, as with one accord they all started for the fountain. But before they could reach it, invisible hands raised Tik-Tok from the marble basin, and set him upon his feet beside it, his water dripping from every joint of his copper body.
Many thanks,
he said, and then his copper jaws clicked together, and he could say no more. He next made an attempt to walk, but after several awkward trials, found he could not move his joints. Peals of jeering laughter from persons unseen greeted Tik-Tok's failure, and the new arrivals in this strange land found it very uncomfortable to realize that there were many creatures around them who were invisible, yet could be heard plainly.
Shall I wind him up?
Asked Betsy, feeling very sorry for Tik-Tok.
I think his machinery's wound, but he needs oiling,
replied Shaggy. At once an oil can appeared before him, held on a level with his eyes by some unseen hand. Shaggy took the can and tried to oil Tik-Tok's joints. As if to assist him, a strong current of warm air was directed against the copper man, which quickly dried him. Soon he was able to say,
Many thanks,
quite smoothly, and his joints worked fairly well.
Come,
commanded Tubekins, and turning his back upon them, he walked up the path toward the castle. Shall we go? Asked Queen Anne uncertainly, but just then she received a shove that almost pitched her forward on her head, so she decided to go. The officers who hesitated received several energetic kicks, but could not see who delivered them. Therefore, they also decided, very wisely, to go. The others followed willingly enough, for unless they ventured upon another terrible journey through the tube, they must make the best of the unknown country they were in. And the best seemed to be to obey orders. Sorry. Okay, end of chapter. I gotta show you. Sorry, I made a face at a picture. Worst fucking picture of a donkey I've ever seen. Yeah, they need to probably keep an eye on TikTok for sure. Callie writes, aw, have a good sleep, Callie. Sleep well. Thanks for hanging out. Okay, you want to see a horrible drawing of a donkey, you guys? Jump scare. Look at Hank. What an ass. Yeah, isn't that horrific? Terrible. And here's TikTok talking to Tubekins, I guess. Yep. So. Oh my goodness. So there's a lot of stuff going on. That's where we'll end the story for tonight, but we have now read 10 chapters. That's awesome. Out of, I think, 25? So we're making decent progress. We will be picking this story up again on Thursday night. So, if anyone has been watching on YouTube, and wants to make sure to catch the next one, make sure to sub. Make sure to drop a sub. Is this a brand new Oz story? I mean, brand new to us. It's quite old. It's the 8th book in the series. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone who has watched on YouTube. Yeah, reminder to sub if you haven't, to drop a like if you've enjoyed this. Leaving comments is also great for engagement. We are working on, I said earlier, we hit our first sub goal, which was 500. We're just over that now, and so our main focus before we can unlock the first level of the YouTube partner program for this channel is to hit our watch hours goal. And the first watch hours goal that we're trying to hit is 3,000 watch hours, and we're at just over 1,600. So we are over halfway there, but this is why I say, like, even people that are mainly watching on Twitch, if you're able to open up the YouTube stream just like in another window, drop an alert over there, that really helps, because that counts towards the watch hours, whether you're watching live or watching the VODs after the fact. I know, it's really important information. I know. So thank you to everyone who's been contributing to that. Really appreciate it. I'm getting excited that, like, that goal is getting, you know, more insight. Yeah. The plan now is we are gonna end this YouTube stream, but we're gonna keep going for a little bit. I'm gonna take like maybe like a 5-minute break, and then we are going to do some traditional ASMR triggers, and I will be going live on my other YouTube channel. So let me just, okay. For people on Twitch, these are my 2 YouTube channels. The first one is the one we're on now, and the second one is the one for the ASMR triggers that I'll be going live on within 10 minutes. Fidge has just posted the links to my Twitch and the other YouTube channel in YouTube chat as well, so maybe I will see some of you over there. Yes, thank you so much, everyone on YouTube, and I will see you on Thursday. I'll be back. Okay, bye.